The Amanda Project by Melissa Kantor and Amanda Valentino. Chapter 12.
Don't tell me that, George. Do not tell me that.
I was on the stairs, and my dad was in the living room, but still his voice boomed. My scribble book was under my arm, and I almost dropped it as I rushed to the kitchen where Amanda was sitting. "Let's go upstairs," I said.
George, you've been my lawyer since Ursula and I got married. You know what this house means to us.
Amanda looked up at me. "Callie, it's okay." The cups of cocoa we'd been drinking were half full, and I grabbed both of them like they were the things that would lure Amanda away from my screaming father. Will you just please come upstairs with me? Why had I left her downstairs and I went to get my book? I knew my dad was on the phone. I knew how quickly things with him could get out of my hand. My eyes were stinging and I blinked hard.
I am not losing this house, George. Not for $2,500. This is our home.
Amanda slid her chair back from the table and walked around to where I was standing. She didn't say anything, just took my wrist and gently touched the tattoo I'd gotten earlier in the day. Then she followed me as I headed back up the stairs.
No, that's where you're wrong. She's coming back. She's coming back, and when she does, she's not going to find out that I've defaulted on our mortgage. I'll get the money. You have to tell them that.
We were halfway up the stairs now. If you'd just stop shouting, we would be out of earshot. But what came next was even worse than the shouting had been.
Please, George, I'm begging you. I can't lose this house.
As I pushed shut the door to my room with my foot, I could hear his voice breaking. "I'm really sorry," I said. My voice was shaky, and so were my legs. I slid down the wall to the floor, placing the mugs next to me. Just the thought of drinking this thick, sweet liquid turned my stomach. "You don't have to be sorry," said Amanda. She was sitting on the edge of my bed, and her big eyes, heavily outlined in black to match the rest of her Patti Smith punk rocker look, bore into mine. I'm so embarrassed. He's not usually like this." But even as I said the words, I knew they were a lie. Sure, once upon a time he hadn't been like this. Once upon a time he'd been funny dad, nice dad, even handsome dad. The first time Callie met him, she said, "Your dad is so cute. He totally looks like George Clooney." And now, with his pale, unshaven face, sunken eyes, and thickening belly, he was almost scary looking. "Really, Callie," said Amanda, "it's going to pass. He'll be okay." In spite of my attempts to stop them, 2 tears rolled down my face. I swiped at them angrily. "You don't know that," I said, and my voice was sharp. "He's never going to get better. He's never going to change." I'd been so excited when Amanda offered to come over after we'd gone to town. She was usually too busy to hang out for an entire afternoon, and she was literally the only person I didn't mind having at my house. And now she'd seen this. "Le système même toujours prochain change," said Amanda. In spite of myself, I laughed. I hope what you just said translates to, "Your distant relative is going to die tomorrow and leave you $2,500. She came over and kissed me lightly on the cheek. "It does," she said. Then she stood up and put her hand on the doorknob. "I don't blame you for going," I said. If I'd been her, I would have left while we were still downstairs. Amanda knelt down next to where I was sitting. "Don't, okay?" she said. "Seriously, do not blame me for going." Her voice was more intense than I'd ever heard it. For a second, I looked at her. "I so didn't plan on something like this happening when I invited you over." She stood up. "Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans." I gave a little half laugh. "Sure," I said. I leaned my head back against the wall and closed my eyes. "See you tomorrow." "Goodbye, Callie." There was a slight click of the door closing, and she was gone. My hands were shaking so much it was almost impossible to get the money back in the envelope. Where had Amanda gotten over $2,000? She definitely wasn't someone who threw money around like Heidi or Tracy. Sometimes she paid for stuff like the tattoo I'd just gotten yesterday, but that cost $12. 12 was, I thought for half a second, 12 was 0.0048% of 2,500. Doing the math made me feel calmer. There had to be some kind of explanation. Maybe she had been saving the money for something. Maybe she'd been saving it, and she'd been so worried about me and my dad that she just... What, exactly? She just thought, hey, what the hell, I'll give them the money, and then once I've helped her out, I'll get Callie in trouble with Thornhill and laugh as she tries to make sense of it all. Okay, that scenario was a bit too ridiculous. So could Amanda have stolen the money? Could she have stolen it and then needed to leave in order to escape detection? That was definitely a whole new reason for her to have cut school today. But then why the elaborate prank with the car and the lockers? If she were on the run from the law, wouldn't she have wanted to get as fast as she could? It didn't make any sense. Was it just a coincidence that the car and the money happened at the same time? Or were the two events connected somehow? Trying to keep everything straight was making my head swirl. I couldn't do this by myself. I just couldn't. But who was I going to tell? Heidi? Tracy? Yeah, right. Lee? Technically, he was my boyfriend, but so far that was more about, like, exchanging Valentine's Day cards and holding hands when we were all at a Ryan diner together. Not something like this. For a moment, I thought about calling Hal or Nia, but that would mean telling them more than I wanted them to know. Did I really want Nia Rivera knowing my family was broke? There was only one person who could help me. I stopped trying to straighten out the bills and just jammed the money in a wad into the envelope. Then, carrying the envelope in front of me like it was a precious object, I made my way along the hall and down the stairs. My dad was still where I'd left him, his snoring replaced by more rhythmic, gentle breathing. For a minute, I questioned the wisdom of what I was about to do. Here was a man who spent his mornings collecting old abandoned wood and his afternoons drinking himself into unconsciousness. Was he really the person I was going to turn to for help? To stop myself from answering, I called, "Dad?" He didn't respond. "Dad?" I called again, and this time I reached down and shook him by the shoulder. Like a cartoon character, he jerked his head up and looked around as if nothing could be more disorienting than being awakened in your own dining room by your own daughter. What? What? He looked up and saw me standing there. "Oh, Callie," he said. He rubbed his eyes with the palms of his hands and then pressed his palms into his forehead as if he had a headache. "I must have fallen asleep. What time is it?" I didn't answer him. Instead, I pulled out the chair next to his and sat down. "Dad," I said, "I need to talk to you." "Sure, honey," he said. His gaze was unsteady, but at least he was looking at me. "What's on your mind?" He reached out toward his glass of wine and went to pull it closer to himself, but I put a hand on his arm. "Dad," I said, "you have to help me." "Of course," he said. He looked at his glass with what I can only describe as longing, but he didn't reach for it again. Without saying anything, I held the envelope out toward him. The flap was down, so you couldn't tell what was inside of it. "What are we going to do with this?" I asked. He looked at my face as if he were seeing it for the first time in a long time, and then, without speaking, he reached for the envelope.